All right, hello everyone. It is so good to see you all. Thank you so much for joining us. This is me, Sansi Pokharel, and I'd like to cordially welcome you guys to the Cybersecurity and the AI panel. This is me, Sansi, and I'm a cybersecurity major at USF. And without any further ado, I'd like to start by introducing our panelists. So first off, we have Sean Foster, who I've had incredible conversation with. He is an incredibly respected cybersecurity professional with over 25 years of experience in the field. He has been leading go-to-market businessing team from companies such as HPE to startups such as IronNet, which he played a key role in taking the company public in 2021. Today, Sean will be providing us insight in the business, financial, and technical aspects of cybersecurity and AI, and especially in a key point intersection of where innovation of cybersecurity and AI meets the market impact. It is so good to have you here, Sean. Thank you so much for joining us. Please give it up for Sean. So next up, we have another incredible professional with us here, Josh Potter. He is the Director of Special Operation Threats and Strategic Programs at the Utility Incorporation. He has a career based in national defense and cybersecurity, where he has worked with agencies such as USSOCOM and Department of Defense, and also serves as a Deputy Executive Director of ICIAE. And he has been pushing forward for private and public collaboration in national security. It is so good to have you here, Josh. Thank you so much for being with us here. And everyone, please give it up for Josh as well. And for our student policy proposal, we have Yoan Hermida. He is a graduate student at USF, and it is so good to have you here, Joan. Please give it up for Yoan as well. To start off our conversation, I would like to pass the mic to Yoan for his policy proposal. Please go ahead. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes, all right. So my name is Yoan Hermida. Thank you, Sansi. Thank you to the GNSI and the Future Strategist Program for the invitation to be here today. And I'm a graduate student here at USF. I am graduating with a master's in international affairs in next month, basically. And I'm starting a PhD in politics and international affairs in August. I also worked in tech for about 16 years before I started graduate school, and I served in the United States Army for 3 years active duty. Okay, so what I'll be talking to you about today is a policy concern regarding AI. I'll give you some background information, and then I will tell you about my proposal to address that concern. Okay, so for those of you who have been either following the news or have read Department of Defense, National Defense Strategy, Cyber Strategy, you know that the People's Republic of China is the #1 pacing threat for the US military, right? So quoting from the 2023 DoD Cyber Strategy, the PRC, and I quote, "The PRC seeks advantages in cyberspace to facilitate its emergence as a superpower." So couldn't be more clear as to the nature of the strategic threat, right? Those of you who have also been following the news, you know about DeepSeek, right? It's been in the news recently how allegedly, and I say allegedly because there are reports that some of the numbers have been inflated, some of the performance numbers, and also the amount of money that it costs to develop a model, but DeepSeek has been in the news. It has, at least the public perception is that the Chinese have comparable AI models to, say, OpenAI, and that they've been able to develop these models at a fraction of the cost than the American models, right? So there's a concern there in terms of efficiency. So the problem I'm trying to address with my proposal is that the People's Republic of China, or PRC, will outpace the US, especially as it relates to military applications of AI, right? So if you read a lot of these DoD strategy documents, They talk about using market-centric solutions, right? So we are a nation of a free market, so it's logical that we would attempt to use market mechanisms to address some of these either real or potential gaps. They also talk about allies, right? So allies are a very big component of DoD strategy document. So they also discuss working with academia to close these potential technological gaps, right? So regarding allies, I'll quote something from, again, DoD strategy documents. Our global allies and partners represent a foundational strategic advantage for the US. So to paraphrase Winston Churchill, the only thing worse or harder than fighting with allies is fighting without them. An example of allies in an alliance structure is the Quad. So for those of you not familiar with the Quad, it's primarily a diplomatic, but also like it's starting to get into military exercises and things like that, but it's an Indo-Pacific alliance composed of India, Japan, the US, and Australia. So within the Quad, these are all nations that, to one degree or another, they share concerns about the PRC's growing capabilities. At the end of, and this is, here I'm beginning to get into the actual proposal. So at the end of 2024, National Science Foundation, in cooperation with the research agencies of these Quad nations, they released a program known as AI Engage. So AI Engage, in its current form, is a program that seeks to advance agricultural applications of AI. So we're talking about crop planning, monitoring for pests, supply chain management. So these are things that help farmers produce more, in essence, right? So in its current form, it's restricted to agriculture, and it's under the auspices of the National Science Foundation. So my proposal is to do three things: expand, transfer, and fund AI Engage. Now, what exactly do I mean by expand, transfer, and fund? So number one, expand AI Engage's mission beyond agriculture. So include military aspects to the program as well. So not just how to improve agriculture, but also how to improve our cyber defense and other potential military applications that may be developed as the program is further refined. In terms of transferring, if you remember, I mentioned that AI Engage is currently managed by the National Science Foundation. So that's great in terms of interfacing academia researchers with these, agriculture research and fostering that research. But you can imagine how it would not be as appropriate for managing a program that seeks to advance military applications. So my proposal is to transfer AI Engage from the National Science Foundation over to the Department of Defense. And also encourage the Quad allies, so Japan, India, Australia, to do something similar with their current implementation of AI Engage. So transfer it from their research agencies over to their ministries of defense or the self-defense forces in the case of Japan. Right, third aspect of this is funding. So the National Science Foundation is great at providing funds, or maybe was providing funds for academia. The original conception of the program was to provide $2.8 million over 3 years for each research grant. Now, I'm going to tell you a number which may be up for debate, but even if it's a fraction of the number that I'm mentioning, it's still a concern, right? So in the first half of 2024, Chinese tech companies spent $7 billion just on AI infrastructure alone. So $2.8 million over 3 years, various grants, let's say it's 100 million, versus 7 billion that the Chinese have spent. You can see the disparity there and why we need to do more. Now, there is a concern. The current administration has put out an executive order that is, if I could summarize it very succinctly, it's America first in AI, right? So it's fostering American-made AI across government. So it's directing any public and private partnerships the agencies responsible or part of the public aspect of it have to make sure that the funds are directed toward American technological companies that are working on AI. Now, my proposal doesn't run counter to that. So what I'm proposing is that the funds be spent in the individual nations. So for example, the US would, through the DoD, fund American companies. They would do their research and development. And then the collaboration would happen at the level of the Department of Defense and Ministries of Defense as appropriate. So whenever they find a military application that they believe should be shared with these Quad allies, because it would help the US in its strategic competition with China, DoD and the Ministries of Defense would interface and share that information, but the actual funds going from the government would go to their respective tech industries. So the Japanese would fund Japanese tech companies, and the US would fund American tech companies. Now, there is a concern that I've heard that I also think AI Engage can help with, and that's regarding talent. So there aren't enough AI software developers, product managers that are graduating from academia and then, going into the tech industry and into government. So one of the things that this program can do, and again, the implementation details are a little bit outside the scope of this talk, but one of the things that this program could foster would be a talent development pipeline that would take potentially, right? We heard the provost discuss the Bellini College of AI and Cybersecurity. It would take graduates from that program and generate a pipeline into government and into the tech industry to address that gap or that perceived gap. Okay, and finally, the AI Engage program should foster open source initiatives, the development of open source AI models, while maintaining, whatever relevant aspects of military security and secrecy that we need to maintain. So if you have, I'll give you an example as to the power of open source. If you have an Android phone in your pocket, that Android phone is based on an operating system called Linux, perhaps one of the most successful open source programs or development initiatives of all time. And these are the types of things that can come out of open source. So in the beginning, it's non-for-profit. And okay, let me back up a little bit. For the non-technical audience, when I say open source, all computer programs are written with source code, right? So computer programmer sits in front of their screen, they receive a list of requirements, they work on these requirements, they write code, and that code generates as an output a binary that is able to execute on computers, phones, tablets, etc. So that's what I mean when I say open source. I mean that the development model would be open. The code that these programmers are writing, it would be shared with the general public, which could then modify it, adapt it, and repackage it like Google did with the Android operating system, and expand into other initiatives. As opposed to a closed source model, so when you think of major corporations like Microsoft and Apple, they, in general, even though they make heavy use of open source programs, in general, they make their programs using a closed source model. So it's proprietary, they keep the intellectual property and don't share it with anyone. Okay, so the big takeaway that I'd like you to get from my talk here is that the PRC is the US's main strategic competitor. The US needs to leverage markets, but also allies and academia to meet this threat. And one way to do that is to expand, transfer, and fund the existing AI Engage program over to the Department of Defense from the National Science Foundation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yoan. I think it is very important for us to discuss about how US can really work on expansion of its AI capabilities and bringing in AI's Engage program into US's security field or security scene will be very resourceful, and I think it will be very important to bring in productive manpower and to also introduced into the open source field in order to put more funding, in order to put more intention and time into defense and security. So I would like to pass on the mic to Sean to hear about your thoughts and feedback on the policy. Yes, I'd like to hand over.
Yeah, very well done. Very well done, and very well thought out, and much needed. Right, I've been, as mentioned earlier, in the cybersecurity field for over 25 years now, and absolutely, PRC is our main concern. And a lot of people think about cybersecurity, they think about attacks monetarily. The Chinese typically are after intellectual property, right, and not funding. And so theirs was well funded as any nation out there, for sure. So I thought you did a great job of covering the bases. I have a couple questions that popped up, and just maybe get thought provoking here on some areas that you might get questioned on as you start to solicit this out there. One being, in the times we're in right now, we're always talking about in government right now of efficiency, right? And we won't get into politics at all, but there is a lot of efficiency going on. This is similar to something that you're proposing that may exist in some form through CISA and the JCDC, Joint Cyber Defense. And so I just want you to think through that in terms of, duplication of efforts, especially when you're asking for funding. Does one program get shut down and this one takes over? Or is it a shared approach? Or is it two separate initiatives happening at the same time? And so that's something, again, that I don't know if you want to comment on now, but we can certainly, something to think through. Other areas I find, again, working in governments, and I know Josh is going to he's more of the authority on this than I am, but sometimes when you have a joint coalition, you have to make sure that those other nation states are pulling their weight. That everyone's, whether it's monetarily, like you said, is everyone putting the equal amount, but really it comes to the heavy lift is the people, right, and the effort and behind the scenes. And how are we going to ensure, there's going to be MOUs that we put in place to ensure that there is a level of standard and a level of effort that takes place through the four nations of the Quad, because I think that is key. Obviously, for the same reasons that we do any of these joint ventures, right? We want to make sure that it's not 80% from one nation and 20% from the other three nations, right? And then maybe the last thing, and maybe this is just being very obvious about it, but as we are working with other nations, every nation has their standard of security, right, and standards of what they put in place. How are we going to ensure those standards are level across the board? That we don't have for layman terms, we don't have a level 10 of security and data breach and regulations around it, and then maybe Japan has a 2 and India has a 3, and how do we make sure that everyone is playing the same field? Because again, if you're starting to move this over from agriculture into very sensitive information, we certainly don't want that to get in the wrong hands, whether it be PRC or any of the other known bad nation states out there. So, but great job, and like I said, I think Josh is more of the authority on this. I'll let him dig in more details. So.
I'm not going to dig into all the details, but what I will tell you is I'm going to focus all of my attention, just so that we're very clear, on the 13 people here in these rows, starting from you the dude with the beard, and then ending with you who just came in. So the reason why is because obviously you guys are here because your class is here, and this is a mandatory requirement for you, which is good. You're here, as I was talking to Lily and Sansi about this, you're here for 2 reasons. Number 1, you want a freaking job when you get out of school. Number 2, and this is lesser, a little bit of policy, a little bit of guidance, a little bit of direction on where you think things are going. Everybody else in here, the guys over here who are doing their schoolwork, the guys over here who are doing their email and talking to their girlfriend, she misses you from last night. But what I'll tell you is, first off, I got to say, with 13 of you, as anybody that is starting a party with 13 people, it's very unlucky. You got to have 14. You got to have, your hobbit thief to go ahead and jump in with you. I'm not sure where that's going to be. Maybe it's going to be you, Sansi. But what we pay our AI cybersecurity folks that are smart, entry level, is about 120, 130 grand a year. And that is normally a hybrid position. If that interests you, and I hope it does, that's what my company is paying. So you might want to pay attention to what Sean and I are talking about. What he was discussing with the policy thing, he coordinated that with us as we were going through. He showed that to us a couple of weeks ago with the rest of the team and said, what do you think? And then they made edits based off of what the guidance and stuff that we as the industry guys were telling them. So that's good. That's good on you. The number one thing that we have to do is to reinforce talent management. And that's what he was talking about. And that's the 13 of you. We have to give you better access to resources. We have to give you, if you show and demonstrate a skill or a mentality and the talent that allows you to have a different approach into looking at solving problems using AI or like the stuff I deal with, which is more the threat programs of dealing with thinking about, how does a bad guy think, and then prevent those types of things, exposing those vulnerabilities before they become capitalized upon, through penetration testing or whatever, then that is where we need you. That is where we need that focus. So the talent management tied into what we need and what we will always need, because bad guys are always a little bit smarter and a little bit more devious, less resourced normally, but very unscrupulous, so they don't care about making mistakes, because when they make a mistake, it still screws up an infrastructure, it still screws up a company. They just may get caught doing it, somebody else could do it better. What we want is we want to empower you guys to come in, guys and gals, toaster ovens or however, but we want to empower you guys to come in and actually protect the infrastructure of our company, protect the data from our clients, and protect the systems that we work on. And if you're able to do that, then good on you. Specifically for advancing and expanding from the Department of Agriculture to the Department of Defense. What agriculture lacks is they lack analysis and analysts. They don't have enough. They have a mentality of, we need to grow crap better, more efficiently in places where it doesn't normally grow without our guidance and help and figure out how to do it in a sustainable way, that it doesn't cost us as much. We need to figure out how to, grow flowers in the desert. And if we can't figure out how to do that, we're messing up. We're going to sit there and start playing with water wars again, which was a big deal for a while. Maybe a big deal again if we can't figure out how to do proper desalinization. So the expansion of a program to come out of one government agency that's low funded and into the government agency that's highly funded, the most funded, which is DOD, that's good, because that program will take off. I will advise you, do not try to push it into the intelligence community for two reasons. Number one, they take it over, make everything classified, nobody else gets access to it. Number two, they like to analyze and do things and understand problem sets, and they don't tell other people about it unless you're in part of that agency or that organization. They do not play well with others. They're single kids. They don't play well with others. My wife is a single kid, so I can make that joke. So I think that the policy, the narrative that was crafted by your team is sound. It makes sense. And the DOD would listen to it. The DOD would listen to it. I know because I work with the DOD, and that's not dissimilar from something we're doing right now, which is, and I can talk more about that later on, is how do we do marketing, basically, for our military operations. I'm not talking about recruiting. I'm talking about, hey, when we go into Abbottabad and kill somebody in Pakistan named Osama bin Laden, how do we message that so that we don't piss off the Pakistanis? Okay, well, there's a way we can do that. It's information operations, influence operations, and SIOP. But we have to use those types of things in the right sequence. And we didn't come up with that by ourselves. We didn't figure out how to do that by ourselves. We actually had to go to a CRM firm, ServiceNow or Salesforce, I can't remember. But a client relations management firm is the ones who helped us figure out how to talk to people so that they didn't go out and go riot in the streets. Okay? So we do that type of stuff. We do that cross-fertilization of information. And we need to, as a government. Those things are important. So with that, thank you very much. I look forward to the rest of the discussion.
Thank you so much, Sean and Josh. I think that while AI Engage will be something that will bring out productive manpower forward to cybersecurity and in the AI landscape, there's also a lot of risks associated with it, and also with the alliance part that Sean mentioned. There's standards of security in every country, and just because we are alliance doesn't mean that we have the same standard of security, and that could really impact the work behind the scenes, as you mentioned. So I would also like to mention that our student-led discussion forum is now open. So if you guys have any questions, you guys are always ready to put them forward to our panelists right here. And yes, anyone has any questions right now, we could take one right away. Yes, sure.
All right, I'll rephrase for those who didn't hear. So the question was, how do you, or what is the percentage of difference between, in cybersecurity, an analytical or an analyst approach as opposed to what's going after policy and administration? Is that correct, Steve? Software development. How much software development is going on? Okay. Specifically for a new threat, or were you concerned? Mostly for us at Itility, it is utilizing our current programs and protocols. However, we have a system set up so that when a new virus comes out, when a new malware attack comes out, when a new threat vector comes out, we're already working in the background between ourselves, our own internal teams, as well as some of the folks who we have outsourced to in order to attack that and then to think forward what the next variation will be. How is that sucker going to metastasize and come into our different things? So that right there is a software and hardware development. And sometimes it is in fact hey, we've got to go ahead and put a physical firewall up and to do something, prevent this type of server or this type of an IP address or someone that is tagged or been tagged by this particular site because they may or may not have been infected, so they have to go through a different level of scrutiny. So their computing lapse time is going to be greater because we have to do a more detailed, thorough check because they've been flagged. Okay, so that is a software or hardware design. But for the policy isn't all that different. The policy has to be sound, but once it's sound, the administration policy, it's protect your shit. Okay, make sure your client data is safe. Make sure you can transfer data safely. That's where your policy stuff really kind of resides. So the policy is going to be probably, I'd spend about, I would say maybe 15% of the time or resources in policy and administration, and about 80% in hardware, software, from preparation, response, and repair or restoration from hardware and software. And then you got the 5% that's kind of those intangible things that also go out there. Okay, that would be my answer. About 15 to 80, and then another 5.
So I have a follow-up question. I was wondering what, as you mentioned, that there is this lack of manpower or skilled coders or developers that could develop very strong, secure hardware and softwares. So why do you think there's a lack of these developers and coders, and what do you think we can do to fix that?
Okay, rephrasing the question, how do you get people interested into STEM? And how do you get people into this particular element of STEM? You have to make it personal, number one. Anybody, I want to see, literally, show of hands, we got about, I don't know, 50 people in here. Has anybody in here, including myself, because I've had it done, has anybody in here had your identity stolen? Or it had something happen, you got a fraud alert on your credit card? So you, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Over 60% of the people in this room have had their identity stolen, have had a fraud alert, hit on something for a fraudulent payment that you didn't make, because I'm sorry, I don't like to buy a whole lot of, comic books in, Urdu. But that's just me, I don't read Urdu. They haven't translated Aquaman into that yet. But the point is, you have to make it personal. In order for somebody to be engaged in something, they have to have some sort of a passion, and they have to demonstrate some sort of a talent or skill. And if they have a passion and a skill, man, the money flows. You can sit there and throw money at something all day long. That is not going to generate passion. I am much more interested in, and I'll tell you, here's a secret for people who are looking at job seeking. If you get a notification on a Sunday afternoon of, hey, would you like to go ahead and to come in for a interview for something, and you see the message and you don't immediately respond to something, that's a test of your passion. See how interested you are in a job. Especially if it's, if you're, if it's during like college football or something like that on a Saturday, and they may know you're out at the game. But if you say, somebody sends you a notification, would you like to go ahead and interview? Saw you had an interest in this job, and you say, oh hell yes, I can't wait. Love to meet you, sir. Whatever. Ma'am, cannot wait to go ahead and interview for this job. It's exactly what I want. They know how passionate you are. All right, so it has to be talent and passion.
Yeah, and as someone who has hired thousands and thousands of people as well, and by the way, today's April 15th, right? So it's tax day. Yeah. So my 13-year-old daughter, I can't. Yeah, I can't file my taxes electronically because my daughter had her identity stolen, I think, when she was 10, and so I still have to. Yeah. So that hit home today for sure, because it's a pain to have to do it, the old-fashioned way. But I think you're right. I think passion is absolutely the word. I would also use one more word as you're out there looking for new careers or your first career, and that's curiosity. Be curious about what you're doing. Yes, you're maybe applying for a programmer job, but why? What are you programming? What is that going to do? What problem does that solve? How's the company going to market that? Again, I come from the go-to-market standpoint, and yeah, look, you're all smart. You wouldn't be in this room if you weren't, but what sets you apart? And it's that curiosity that you have about what you're doing, problem you're solving, are you making the world a better place? All those things, that really matters. And that shines through in those interviews as I'm talking to people. You can certainly see their enthusiasm and passion, but are they curious? Are they asking questions that aren't, hey, what's the 401k like, right? I mean, really understand, and do your research about the company that you're going to go work for or the agency that you're going to go work for, because that absolutely makes a difference.
If I could also say a couple things, not so much about why there isn't enough talent. Can't speak to that directly, but having been part of software development teams, my last position, I was a manager of quality assurance. So I was in the weeds of people trying to develop applications, getting out the bugs, et cetera. Training somebody from a technical perspective is straightforward. So it's not easy, but it is straightforward, right? You learn the skills, you practice them, then you employ them in your job. What is harder is the thought leader aspect of it, in my opinion, right? So time and again, I saw teams where, for example, the product owner, product manager was not clear on what the requirements should be, was not clear on the direction of the project, right? So beyond your developers, I also think we need to do a better job at training these thought leaders, which again, when I say thought leader, I'm not necessarily speaking about C-level leaders, right? Within teams, there are thought leaders. So even if you're not very technical, I think we do need to do a better job at teaching these, what they call, quote unquote, soft skills to be able to properly advance goals within teams. And that's, again, that's harder. It's not as straightforward as introducing somebody to for loops and hello world statements. That takes a lot more work.
Thank you so much. I think this is very important to us as college students. So what does make a student stand out as a professional in the security field? Passion, definitely. We need to have this curiosity. We need to want to learn more because this is a very fast-paced industry. So we will have to learn and update ourselves time and again. There needs to be certain trainings, very straightforward, very direct, and trainings that push the thought leaders forward in the industry so that they can lead, they can engage the people, share their passion to everyone, to the public, to their own teams as well. Thank you so much, guys, for your insightful answers. Any other questions from the students? Yep. We have mics right there, so if you guys have questions, the mics will be passed to you.
Hey, Irina Valnes here. I am Space Me for SOCOM ESREC. My question is, so for someone who's not familiar with AI Engage, could you elaborate a little bit on what this capability really is, how it could potentially be used within DoD community, especially SOF, why should DoD invest in it, and what crucial gap it is supposed to fill that has not been filled yet? Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess there are two components to that. One is its current form, right? So its current form is all about giving research grants to researchers in academia so that they can work on AI applications for agriculture, right? So that's its current form. What I'm proposing is expanding that. So military applications, cyber defense, the gap, I will discuss the gap in relation to something that, a program that CISA has, or CISA, right? So the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, I believe is the acronym. They have a similar, not similar, but they have initiatives to fund cyber defense, to fund intelligence applications for AI. Notice I said intelligence, right? So it's not necessarily strictly military applications. They also bring in intelligence agencies. They bring in the Five Eyes, New Zealand, Australia, Britain, US, Canada, into basically information sharing. So that's the CISA initiative. Where this is different is that you are bringing in Indo-Pacific allies that share many, if not most, of the concerns over the rise of the PRC and the capabilities of the PRC. So that's the gap that this is trying to fill. You're bringing together a group of nations that has similar strategic objectives vis-a-vis the PRC, pooling their resources. Again, no money is going across borders, but they are pooling their resources that they can share at Ministry of Defense, DoD level. And then I'll let Josh speak to the rest of it.
Down the street, you have, at MacDill Air Force Base, you have United States Special Operations Command. And at SOCOM, what they have is, and they are not just one, Army or Navy, it's an Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Space Force, Coast Guard guys. And more importantly, there are the international teams that are there. The international group of special operations groups, which represents our partnerships. And on any given day, we have special operations team members in 80 different countries. Some with a very low profile, some with a very high profile working out of an embassy. But we are highly and hyper engaged around the world with this global soft footprint. When we have an enabled technology that we can share with our partners, that brings and lends credibility for them and for us. It strengthens their capabilities, and it lends our relationship and strengthens the ties to credibility. So we have these 80, countries out there that are kind of relying on us. And I remember, one time I was there were only 3 uniformed people in the specific country, the Republic of Georgia. And that was back in 1998, I think, 98. 99, I'm sorry. And at that time, the Minister of Defense of that country, because I was the Green Beret that happened to be there, was my weightlifting partner. General David Hefzadza, Lieutenant General, 3-star. And he was a beast. The guy could outlift me, which was embarrassing a little bit, but it was a sense of pride for him. And the reason why he liked to go work out with me is because we talked every single morning about what was going on in the world and, going out there doing manly things in between sets. We had discussions on where his country was going. And if we have a new capability of something I can share with him that can help his programs be more powerful, and it's cheap, the information's already there, it doesn't require a crazy supercomputer, oh hell, he's going to go ahead and take advantage of that. He's going to go right to the American ambassador and go, I was talking to Josh, and he talked to me about this thing from the Department of Agriculture. I'd like the American Ag advisor from the embassy to meet with my guys and see how we can go ahead and implement this and to help reinforce our systems. That's what SOF can do for those types of programs. And without modifying a dang thing. But that's an international direct communication that we can go ahead and do, which fosters and strengthens everybody's mission.
I appreciate the information. I have a question about your proposal. I had to write it down so I didn't forget it here. With agriculture, there is a high level of predictability in terms of growing things and then the logistics of moving it from the field to the market. In national security, there's a high level of unpredictability. The whole crazy Ivan, we don't know what our adversary is going to do, what are their actions or engagements, there's a level of secrecy. So the question is, what types of factors or entering arguments would you use the AI model? What type of things would this model use in order to get the information that you want out of it?
I would ask that exact same question that you just posed to ChatGPT and say, using this policy, uploaded, what else do I need to know? How else can I factor? And I would use those systems that exist. It only costs you $20 a month. I know because I use all the damn time. But ask the computers to do those types of things at the same time as you can go ahead and ask the people who are on your team. See who gets a answer first, a more succinct answer, and who has a better answer. And then when you talk to the people, because they're not going to come up with the same stuff, reshape your question, and then take away your bias, and keep massaging those types of problems, because it will help not only you to answer those questions, but it'll also, because it's ChatGPT and it's an open AI, it'll help the system learn what when you ask a question like that, what you're really kind of driving at. So that is exactly how I do it. Your turn.
No pressure. So, I mean, part of your question is how do we train these potential AI models for military applications? How do we train them? So that's a little bit outside the scope of my particular expertise. The only thing I'll say is that the suggestion or the ask that part of this, or a great part of it, be in the form of open source models, I think there is value there. There is value in community and in generating, pooling potentially hundreds of thousands of developers, pulling their skills to develop an open source model. The military implementation of it, or like specifics, that would be more for DoD personnel, DoD analysts to implement. And again, because of I'm not as technical in the AI space, I'm more speaking from a policy perspective. Those are details that would need to be worked out, in fairness. That it's a legitimate question. Just I don't have the details on how to work them out just yet.
Is it on? Yes, it is. Good morning. My name is Gatlin Nelson. I'm a computer engineering undergraduate at Embry-Riddle, and I'm very curious as to how AI currently plays a component in more of like a passive mode for data analysis or statistical analysis. Can you foresee where AI might be integrated into cyber operations or a military application in an active component, such as an intrusion prevention system or producing actionable intelligence?
I'll take the corporate side and I'll turn to you on the military side. But absolutely, certainly think about your security operations centers right now. And again, just a few years ago, we had people working 24/7. There's a real thing called alert fatigue, right? When you're getting thousands and thousands of alerts a day, and you're staring at a screen and you're trying to make sense of it. And we're humans, so we miss things, and we take breaks, and we go on vacations, and all that kind of stuff. Well, that doesn't happen with AI. Right, so all the heavy lifting can now be done with AI that can go through those thousands of alerts or millions of alerts that we get daily and find the anomalies, right? And I would stop as far at that point, right? And let AI find the anomalies, find the things that need to take a look at, make suggestions, as you said earlier, make suggestions. But I heard a saying the other day, AI proposes, humans disposes, right? And I think that's the case, right? So you can get all the way to a point where AI finds something in some sort of alert or breach. It makes suggestions on what to do, but it does not take action. That's when a human comes in and brings context to it and some reality to the world, and then makes those decisions. So I think that's certainly on a security operations side, the way I see it. I think probably maybe a little different on the military side, but.
All right. Let's make this interactive. Go ahead and everybody pull out your phones if you have a Chat GPT or an AI account. Go ahead and pull out your phones. I'm going to give you a prompt, which I'm going to ask you. Go ahead and bring up your app. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and type this in. See how fast your fingers work. Mine don't work for the damn. And I will be interested to, because this is something we do, personally, professionally, and ethically, very quick. So, write in, I'm a UN military observer, period. Currently, my team is assessing where and when Russian operations breach Ukrainian border territory. I have access to geospatial data, open source data, web monitoring data, and most importantly, video feeds, facial recognition, vehicle recognition, and license plate recognition along the border region, period. Your next line is, how can I use AI to help determine if a Russian vehicle or operation breaches the border, ? Please provide a response in detailed paragraph format. Period. Send.
Can you spell open spatial? That's where you got me.
Everybody in here that was doing that just got an option of how AI can be used to do something which when you're looking at tens of thousands of cameras and video and perceptions a day, you can't sit there and as a person or as a team of people watch all that crap and see what happens and know when something's going to come in, but they can do the predictive analysis using AI if you've got access to those types of data pools to generate that stuff with what? With a program. With one of you 13 or now 14. Thank you, Mr. Frodo, for showing up. Okay, or Baggins. So what I'm telling you is that is exactly how we go ahead and we do it. And that prompt, yeah, that's going to be biased and all sorts of stuff. But that's exactly how we start those conversations now. I've had access to a Cray supercomputer in 2020 when I was dealing with a question like that and a team like that. And it took me, just so you understand, about $18,000 and 2 weeks on a Cray supercomputer to generate what's probably sitting in your hand right now. So yeah, $20 a month. Yeah, I'll pay for GPT Plus, at least to start the conversation.
Thank you. My name is Amara Blanton. I'm a senior at Embry-Riddle. I study global conflict studies. My question is, with the Google's release of Gemini Security version 1 and them moving into developing AI models focused on cybersecurity and digital security, how do you see the integration of the private industry into solutions such as using AI Engage with our global partners in terms of boosting digital national security? And boosting digital national security.
I have an account with ChatGPT, Perplexity, obviously Gemini and Copilot. Those are just things. And Claude is another one I use, Anthropic or whatever the hell they use for Claude. Claude's more for programmers. So I use different AI chatbots with my own profile, and I'll ask them the same damn questions. And I'll see what kind of comes out and gets different responses to see if I really like something, if I want to do something on a policy, I will ask it the same thing and see who has a lower bias. The most important thing that we talked about was, hey, what do we need to do to make AI better, smarter? Remove your bias. You can't, but you can do your best to remove your bias from your prompts. Okay, by acknowledging what they are. And that is how we go ahead and we think. I actually have to use and I do it all the dang time. I will use the same prompt in different systems and see where I think it's going better, smarter, where I don't have to sit there and get too intuitive. And if I've got a lot of time to spend on a problem or to answer a problem, I will always put in the end of the prompt, you may ask me questions I haven't thought of, or something like that. It's like, you may ask me 3, questions that will help you craft a better answer or a targeted answer. And it does. And it does. So that's more of a, hey, how do we proliferate AI into national security is, we remove our it's okay to ask it questions. We have to limit or firewall off company proprietary information, national security information, and those types of things, especially from an AI system. Or you use the system to go and you use dummy names, you use dummy locations and stuff like that, and then you just do word swaps and boom, policy. But that's how we do it. And it's relatively simple to start the conversation. And then you go to your team and say, okay, this is what I came up with. What did you come up with? Or what come up with? And, I'll tell you, the human brain is a lot slower in communicating their decisions and the information that they have than AI.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add to that. I think that's pretty well done. I think it's just no. I think it's just a matter of all these different generative models that are out there. Is that we have clean AI pipelines too, right? So it's indicative of us to make sure that they are transparent, that they're auditable, and because bad data in, bad data out, right? And again, biases that these models tend to have at times. So we and as a society, certainly from a trust and a confidence standpoint as consumers, but also the government, I think also has to have some sort of regulations over that to make sure that they can audit these language models. They can that it's just again it is transparent, and it's not so much as you talk about Microsoft and some of the others out there. It's hey, this is mine. We're not going to show you kind of the nuts and bolts. Well, I don't think that is something that would be very indicative of the future for AI. I think you have to and get more confidence in it as well.
Yeah, so I think also part of the question is how do we get government, industry, and academia interfacing, right? And these are institutions that, as an aspiring academic, I have more questions than answers. I'll start off with that. But these are institutions that work at different paces. They have different goals, right? So the government is often slow, bureaucratic. You have silos that try to advance their own interests. There's a great article for any policy wonks out there by Graham Allison on bureaucratic politics and how that bureaucratic politics influenced the Cuban Missile Crisis. Fascinating, but it gives you an insight into how the government works, right? Academia is often about advancing knowledge, right? Doing research for research's sake, in a way, right? To advance knowledge. And then in industry, you have the profit motive, you have this idea that you need to fail fast and move on to the next thing. So the challenge is really about aligning these different methods of working, these different goals, and somehow, again, more questions than answers on my end, but somehow getting these to align toward a common purpose. Yeah, that's a challenge.
Hi, I'm Ida Rizal, currently graduate student here at USF. So I had one curiosity. Is AI actually making cybersecurity space more secured, or has it increased the threat?
Okay. Yeah, it is, both. It is artificial intelligence increasing the cybersecurity risk, especially for insider threats, or is it making it more safe? The answer is absolutely both. I'm sorry, it's not one or the other. You have, and one of the ways that I will talk about is a thing called data poisoning. Data poisoning. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the concept of data poisoning, and I've got I don't know, Sansi or Lily, or just push out those graphics that we were talking about before that I did up. But the reason why I want to mention this one particular is because I cover in this thing all of the major cybersecurity incidents in the last decade, from 2015 to 2025, in like one slide, and just give you just a quick snapshot. And at the end, in one of them, I also articulate, hey, what are the different types of either intentional or unintentional cybersecurity threats that we deal with. And a intentional data security threat that we're dealing with is data poisoning, which is when you have your Russian bots, put a whole bunch of information and qualify questions that go into, say, ChatGPT or anything else through your botnet by using purposely wrong information just to populate it, just to get it out there, just to train the models, so that when somebody else asks a question on the rights of the Russians, what rights do the Russians have in the Black Sea oil? And they say, oh, well, historically, the Russians have always had access to the Black Sea oil, which isn't freaking true. But it was the Ukrainians that really did, even during the old Soviet Empire. So when the Russians in 2014 went into Crimea and seized Crimea and all the oil rigs off of in the Black Sea, which is a clear violation of the United Nations and international law by having uniformed military in there, It was normalized. That's an example of data poisoning. Because one of the things that they did was they pushed out in their information operations all sorts of information of, oh, well, these are all, run by, maintained by, and secured by Russians anyway. So why do they have Russian Ministry of Defense soldiers up on these oil rigs now in somebody else's sovereign territory? So that's data poisoning is a terrific example, I think, of how we of a threat. And of course, we've been talking the whole time about how we make it easier, and it's a lot easier to use AI for dealing with cybersecurity threats. You just go to Claude and say, how do I protect my system better, or what are the indications and tripwires that I need to generate to protect my client database? Give me some guidance on how I can do this better, more efficiently, and what safeguards do I need to put into a tech stream so that I can safeguard data client information. Fantastic way to go ahead and use AI for somebody who's like me, not all that. The last time that I really did programming, I was 8 years old. And I had to learn BASIC to, on a TRS-80 Tandy Model 1 computer, so that I could type and program a game that I could play it. I cheated.
Yeah, and I know we're out of time, so I'll be very quick on this point. But I think it was a great question, because I'll just ask you, go back in the the time machine, and you're sitting here 10 years ago. You could ask the exact same question about cloud computing. Is cloud computing going to make our lives easier, or is it going to open up the threat landscape? Yes and yes, absolutely. And think about how much easier that has made our lives, and all the capitals of industry that have benefited from it, but also open cloud security, and there was cloud issues and things like that. So dare I say 10 years from now, there's going to be I can't, yeah, exactly. So we might be having the same conversation, but it's a great way to think about it. Absolutely, it's going to make our lives easier. It already is. It's making security, again, I think much more efficient, but also is opening, that aperture to, hopefully we're all the good guys in here, but there's a lot of bad guys out there too that are using the same stuff that we are. So, but great question. Thank you.
With that, I also even in this conference, I think that AI is still a work in progress, and I think it'll always be a work in progress in some sense. So there is a lot of fallacies in AI, and which people are working very fast and to work on and to improve the technology. But there's still so many risks associated, because it's not just about a singular person, or it's just not about something random. It's about security. It's about lives. It's about data. It's about protection. So I think it's a great question. What risks are associated with AI? It is making big decisions. Is it capable of making it? I think it was a great question and insightful answers from you guys. Thank you so much. We can take one last question if anyone has a question. This will be a short 5-minute question answer. So yeah, we can take one. Do we have one question at the back? I'm so sorry. We will take. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alexander Morgan. I graduated a couple years ago. This might not be the right major, but a bachelor in health sciences and minor in intelligence studies. On the governmental side of things, and I will preface this by saying I'm currently working at an H&R Block. What do you think of AI's ability to disrupt potential government and revenue intake? That's it. Governmental revenue intake, taxes.
My role in SOCOM when I was getting ready to leave was I ran 3 programs. As a colonel, I was the director from the United States government, DOD, for counter transnational organized crime, counter narcoterrorism, and counter threat finance, which means my job was, as the military lead in all those things, to answer that question. And I did it for 4 years on, hey, how are bad guys disrupting us? What are we doing about it? What are we capable of doing about it? And then how do we go ahead and generate responses and do things? disrupting revenue, and I will talk about disrupting revenue in the terms of God, I really want to talk about ISIS on this one. I can't do that. Oh, hell yeah, I can. So what we did in 2016, when we were looking for how do we disrupt a threat to the world, the Islamic State, we were under a moratorium where we could not have boots on the ground in Syria, for example, in 2015, because we were told with all the stuff that was going on there, people are cutting off heads and stuff, we will not have American troops in Syria at all, ever. President signed it. It's not going to happen, right? So in May of 2015, where our team hit Syria, and we landed, and we went in, we did that for a very specific reason. We killed the finance minister of ISIS, Abu Bakr. It was in May of 2015, for those of you who are Googling it right now. And it was a big frickin' deal, because what we extracted from that was about 14 terabytes of information on how the Islamic State had all of its financial operations going. It was a cash-rich, safeguarded society. It was generally isolated, and we had to figure out how to go ahead and disrupt it. They had, at the time, 400 plus oil wells, and we were kind of bombing it every once in a while and trying to figure out what we were doing so that we didn't have any, civilian casualties or anything else. What we figured out when we started looking at the data was that there was, of the 400 oil wells and the 52 oil fields, there were 3 that produced 75% of the revenue because they were in such good operating condition for the Islamic State. And at the time, that was their number one revenue stream, was conflict oil. So we went through the process of targeting those oil wells, destroyed them, maintained pressure to continue to destroy them. Then we destroyed their repairing capacity, so they couldn't fix them. And then we destroyed their distribution network, their fleets of trucks that were out there. We destroyed those too. And then we went to the cash houses. We went to the cash-rich banks. It's a cash society. They don't have credit cards. And we got them on the night before payday, and we bombed the Bank of Mosul with 16 TLAMs to the point that it was so hot you could see the money burning from space. Blew up and burned about $85 million, and then prevented that from going to their fighters. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. That was called Operation Tidal Wave, and it happened September, October 2016. So when we wanted to use something like that, we generated from using, hey, how do we look at all this stuff, 14 terabytes of information? We used AI to do a documentation exploitation to help us find out where everything was coming in and to sort the data from our teams. We couldn't do all that crap by hand. It would have taken us decades. So we modified a couple of computers in order to do it for us. So from the May of 2015, when we seized the data, to going through the planning, and dropping bombs starting in September of 2016, at that point, the Islamic State had reached its expansion node, and then it's continued to contract. They lost every capability they lost their complete revenue stream. They transferred their revenue stream from being predominantly oil to exploitation of the people. So they lost the will of the people because they kept taxing them. Their taxes went up 400%. They were having to pay all sorts of different, I've got lists of all this crap that we did. And obviously, and it took about another year and a half until we were able to declare basically victory. So that's how you can use these AI models in order to effectively destroy a revenue stream or an economy. Now it's 3.5 minutes, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. We have around 5. we have around 5 minutes to this session. So yeah, Joanne.
Yeah,
I'll
very
blend
briefly.
this up.
Very briefly, I will just, the way I'll frame my answer is AI has a great potential. It has a lot of revenue generating potential for the government. But something we haven't really talked about is overregulation. There is a potential that the government generate policies and directives to try to constrain AI at too high a level. What I mean by that, and I recently interviewed who read The Economist, there was a great op-ed by a board member of Meta, and his argument was that we should be regulating AI at its point of contact with infrastructure. So there where AI meets healthcare concerns, there where AI meets infrastructure management, that's where we should be doing the regulation, not trying to regulate these models in the abstract. So I know it's a little bit different from what you asked, but I do think there is a danger of government over-regulating the potential that AI has.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. Let's give it up for ourselves, actually. This was an amazing session. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you guys had so much fun. Thank you to our incredible panelists for being here and giving us such insightful discussions about AI in government, in technical fields, in business, financial fields, its risks, something that we are all worried and scared about since it's in a very emerging place of AI. Where do we stand with AI and cybersecurity? About revenue. We discussed a lot and we covered a lot of topics today. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating, all of our students for asking such brilliant questions, for brilliant answers. Thank you so much. It was an honor to moderate this panel. Thank you so much, guys. And with this, I'd like to sign off from the stage. Thank you so much, everyone.